Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. I'm taking over for Dave DeFore, but I got Andrew and S here to talk about the Western Conference Finals that just kicked off, and OKC looks sharp. What's up, Andrew? What's up, S?
What's up?
Hey, guys.
Andrew is in the building for OKC's first game. Kind of crazy. OKC had so much time between their first series and their second series. Yeah. And then they had to turn around and play against Minnesota for the first game of the Western Conference Finals. And they took it 114-88. And I'm not going to lie, S, I don't know if this felt that way when you were watching it on TV, but it felt quiet. Like, I don't know if ESPN's changed the broadcast, but that first quarter had a little bit of people quiet, a little nervous for OKC, but things turned around. What'd you see out there, S?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it. I mean, look, the broadcast is always weird in the sense that sometimes the audio is a little muted. So I wonder if it is Andrew, was it quiet in there at the start of the game?
So if we're expecting the crowd to be as loud as Game 7, then yes, it was quiet.
Okay.
But was
it?
Fair. But was it quiet? No, it was not.
Yeah.
When you're the team that you're rooting for, though, shoots 35% from the field, not a lot to cheer for. And when part of it too is that they were missing just easy shots. They're in the first quarter alone, they're 1 of 4 on layups and 0 of 4 in floater range. So like those, whenever you're just missing easy shots, and like the crowd is ready to pop, at all times in Oklahoma City. And when there's not really anything happening that's getting you there, I think it will mute the crowd a little bit. But that third quarter, the crowd was wild. The team was playing good. And so they were alive then. But the first half was just strange overall. I thought it was a very strange game, like statistically, when you look at it.
The pacing was weird.
You brought up those layups because that really was one of the biggest difference makers, just the points in the paint differential, with the Thunder ending up 54, Timberwolves just 20. At one point going through the third quarter, you saw the Timberwolves make as many threes as OKC had attempted, which was 13. Yeah. And Minnesota had 41 threes attempted by the end of the third quarter. And this was a tale of two halves, S. You saw Julius Randle go off in the first half. And then it felt like the fountain of Julius dried up in the second. Like I'm seeing the defense obviously being able to keep them out of the paint in the second half. But Julius, let's start with him because I really feel like he's been having an unbelievable, glorious playoff run right now.
Yeah, Randle was awesome in that first half. I mean, without him, I think Minnesota would have been in a bit of trouble offensively just because his shot making, I think he was 4 or 5 from 3 in that first half.
Yeah.
The way that he was able to stretch the floor for Minnesota was massive because they
5
were
of
taking
6, actually. He was
there you go.
Ooh,
5 of 6, which he was awesome in that first half. And so like the shot making in general was huge from Randle because they were just taking a lot of threes. I will say, you brought up the 3-point shooting aspect, the fact that Minnesota took 51 threes and OKC just took 21, but OKC ended up making 52% of their threes and Minnesota ended up shooting 29% from 3. It's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, Andrew. And I know we've talked about this before where it's like OKC will concede a lot of threes, right?
Yep.
But they're so smart at targeting who is going to take that 3, where they're going to take that 3 and how contested that 3 ends up being. And I think it's sort of like Minnesota could walk away. I was listening to the post game and Anthony Edwards was like, yeah, we got good shots. We should be confident in what we're going to see in game 2. But like, should they approach this series the same way that they did tonight and taking the shots that OKC was willing to concede to them, Yeah,
it's a lot of grenades that happen, in this one where they are shutting things off for the Wolves, in the paint, and they can't drive and kick like they want to. Yeah. And then they just have to spray the ball out and then hope that somebody makes a shot, which is not exactly a great recipe for success. And I think the Thunder, they feel good about the way that they played today. It took them a minute they called it to recalibrate because they had just played against Denver for 7 straight games. It's mostly zone that's thrown at them. And Minnesota comes out and you're like, oh my gosh, this almost like feels like a regular season game because of the way that the defense was being played.
There was one play that Shai walked up the floor. I think it was in the third quarter. Julius Randle stops him at the free throw line. He takes one jab dribble, like jab, step, dribble, backs up. And it looked like summer pickup. It looked like a practice game in the way that they played against the man defense versus the zone.
Yeah. They had room to get to their spots. Mm-hmm. And that was really big for them. And Shai even pointed this out because I was asking him about like what he thought about the defense. And he said, Minnesota threw a zone at us in one play and we immediately knew how to pick it apart because of the way that we played against Denver. And they immediately got a dunk against their zone. And I think they abandoned it after that.
Computer.
They did.
They are a learning machine. They are literally artificial intelligence. And it's like the offensive side, they look that way. The defensive side, this was a clinical performance from OKC. I mean, they forced Minnesota into 17 turnovers, tons of points in the paint. They got inside the paint often, tons of points off turnovers as well. They dominated all of those metrics you look at as a team that just forces tons of turnovers constantly. One of the most aggressive defensive schemes ever, really.
Yep.
I mean, this is the recipe to lose from Minnesota's perspective. You cannot turn the ball over like this as frequently as you did. Did OKC, like anybody post game, mention the fact that like this was the way they wanted to play tonight, was force turnovers, get things out and running? Or is that just the game plan every night?
Well, we asked Mark about this all season, and his answer is always, it is not our game plan to get steals. Our game plan is to crowd teams in the middle. Right. And it generates steals because like they love to play the gaps, and that is like a really important thing for them. And so, because they play the gaps, they're going to get steals. So it's just like a byproduct of what they're trying to do, but they're never like, hey, we're going to sell out. We need to make sure that we get, 6 steals in the second half or something. It's like, no, we're just going to execute our scheme. And as a byproduct of our scheme, we're going to get steals. And if you play fast, like it's going to benefit the Thunder. And I thought it was really interesting. The Thunder, I think, dictated play tonight with their lineups. In the second half, and specifically in the fourth quarter, they didn't play Isaiah Hartenstein. Mm-hmm. They played small. And Mark closed this game playing J-Dub at the 5 and playing all guards that were just so pesky with Shai, and they didn't have an answer for it. Because you get the ball to Naz Reid and you have Lou Dort there, or you have Alex Caruso there, or you have Casey Wallace there. It just makes them feel uncomfortable. And I think that was part of like how they shut Randle down in the second half was they denied the ball. They didn't allow him to get these shots that he was getting in the first half, and they put a smaller guy on him. And they're one of the few teams that can do that. And it really bothers their bigs.
It also forced Minnesota to go smaller. So they played Rudy Gobert 21 minutes in this game. And they were like, man, we can't have Gobert out there against the arms of Casey Wallace and Alex Caruso.
He didn't play in the fourth
around.
either. Like didn't play 1 minute in the fourth.
And it's worth stating the stat. 19 turnovers for Minnesota, leading to 31 transition points or, points off of turnovers for OKC. And I want to go back to the lineups conversation because I think that is why OKC is so damn dangerous. Jalen Williams didn't play in this game. This is the same Jalen Williams that had significant minutes against Denver. He was a DNP in this game. You look at by the end of the second quarter, 4 people had scored for Minnesota. 9 people had scored for OKC. There was just so many different pieces of evidence throughout this entire game that they had depth, and not only depth, they had depth that could do whatever it is that the last lineup could do. Right. It was that 5-out ball that was playing so well on offense, but it was also the fact that they could switch on everything, or that they could dig down and be fast enough to sprint around if the ball got kicked out, to Dante DiVincenzo or Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like those guys, Naz Reid, they were not hitting their outside shots well because there was constantly a hand in their face. And I'm looking at OKC and I'm like, the diversity in which you can go out and attack Minnesota is, I was like looking at Minnesota, like, I don't know what your answer is going to be because they still have the depth to have the aggression on defense that they need and still have the energy on offense that's required to be able to beat this team, whether it's in transition or in the half court. I don't know what the answer is for Minnesota if they want to be able to have that fountain of youth in the first half and still continue that into the second against a new lineup and a new lineup and a new lineup out of OKC.
They just have to hit shots. And I know that's such a simple answer. You know, shout out to Dwayne Casey. He said it was a make or miss league 10 years ago, and it still is a make or miss league. And so I really think for Minnesota, it's making the shots that OKC is giving to you. You know, the corner threes that OKC likes to concede. You got to hit those shots. Dante DiVincenzo, Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker made 7 of their 36 shots. 7 of 36.
Ouch. Okay, well, I feel like before we go to break, I'm obliged to tell you that Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are cousins. Yes.
You didn't know this?
If you didn't know, we're letting you know that as well. All right.
They got the cousin watch on ESPN.
There you go. Let's talk about Minnesota after the break. Even with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shooting 14 free throws, somehow Minnesota was not able to take advantage of the fact that fouls were
Let's have the discussion.
Around. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because I know a lot of people feel away. Even Anthony Edwards felt away when he threw the ball at Shai as he went down with another foul call.
Yeah.
I know you have some thoughts. Andrew, I want to hear them right after.
Yeah.
What do we think about Shai?
I will throw Andrew a lob here. Okay. I will just let you guys know immediately that I do not think the reason the Minnesota Timberwolves lost this game was because SGA took 14 free throws. We just listed out a bunch of different reasons why Minnesota lost this game. 3-point shooting, points in the paint, all of the above, the turnovers. Those are the reasons Minnesota lost game 1. But the fouls are an aspect that naturally are something that you kind of have to deal with, especially because their best defender, Jaden McDaniels, fouled out of this game. Yep. I think one of the huge parts of this game was when McDaniels picked up his 4th foul. The game sort of shifted from there. J-Dub got in rhythm, SGA got in rhythm, even Chet got in rhythm. We didn't talk about that much, but his 4th quarter was awesome. It really shifted the approach for Minnesota. So I can understand like mentally the foul drawing changes and it kind of wears on you. But SGA also, and Andrew, I'm sure you know this, lives in the paint. He took 16 shots in the paint tonight. He averages 11 on the season. Okay. He's one of the best, if not the best driver in the NBA next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's nobody else that drives like those two. So yeah, he's going to draw a lot of fouls. Does he do the dark arts? Does he know to twist and bend in the right way to get the right type of call? Yes, naturally. But Andrew, I have to ask you this, okay? Because this is my opinion. This is how I feel about the foul drawing situation. How does like Shai feel about this? How does Shai feel about the grifting conversation whenever it's brought up to him?
He doesn't care.
Right.
Of course. He frankly doesn't care because, I mean, here's the deal. Somehow we talk like ethical basketball has become a thing that we talk about now, and everybody just wants like the game to be played in a particular way. But the problem with that is like, okay, well then you can't love Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson,
Drew Flowers,
or Kobe Bryant, or any of these guys that everyone's like, oh man, the greatest of all time, the GOATs.
Yep. LeBron,
and then say like at the same time, we don't like this from Shai. It's like,
sure.
Then like the fact is you haven't watched basketball because almost every single great player did this. Like they look for advantages, look for ways to gain an advantage for their team, and part of that is, especially in the first half when the Thunder had nothing going. I mean, they had nothing going.
Yeah.
Except for Shai getting to the free throw line. I mean, that really kind of saved their butts in the first quarter because they could not make a layup. They couldn't make a three. They had nothing going. And so, yeah, this is part of the game. You can be frustrated by it, sure. But like Jokic does it. What do we think about him? best player in the world, right?
Yeah.
She's going to win the MVP. Yeah. It's going to be announced tomorrow night and on Wednesday night. And listen.
Oh, is it official? Do we finally know that it's going to be?
It's official here on the Athletic NBA Daily.
Breaking news.
But
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, it is bizarre. I think the pushback. The ethical basketball pushback on what has been basketball for as long as we've known it.
Well, the thing about I see what you're saying in terms of like, especially the older players, and this is what they've done. I think the game has changed in terms of how the game is called, the physicality level. Of course, we've said that word a million times, the buzzword of 2025, physicality. And that is probably why the folks that are complaining about it are talking about the product, right? The stoppages, the amount of times that we're stopping the flow of the game because they are, Shai's going to the basket and he's getting free throws. He shot 9 free throws in the first half, and folks were on all up and down my X timeline being like, again. And what's funny about it is, like we talked about in today's game, it happens. Like you look at Jokic. I mean, how funny would it be if you had free throw merchant against free throw merchant and Jalen Brunson versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? It happens. But at the end of the day, it's what you're saying, Andrew. These players are smart. They're playing to the game that's being allowed to happen. Now, I will say, I have seen the photos. I have seen the screenshots of Shai going into the paint and making the faces. Potentially, I haven't heard it with sound, but potentially making sounds. Feigning being hit. And hey,
I think it's a skill. I think it's a skill.
I mean,
it's a skill.
Look, we reward Oscar winners.
You can hate him all you want, but hey, it works. And he's smart. He's helping his team. And as you mentioned, Andrew, he helped save this team when there was nothing going. And again, 9 free throws in the first half, only 5 in the second. Guess what? He didn't do it as much when the offense started flowing. Yeah. So it is a factor of, let me just get my team going. Let me do something to help my team. Are you going to be mad at that? You can't be mad at that.
Well, listen, like this is a skill that Anthony Edwards would like to have too. I mean, how many times has he driven to the basket and yelled, "Hey,"
right
after he goes
up?
Every
player does that. Yeah. And by the way, Anthony's shot chart tonight, only 1 made basket at the rim.
Yeah.
And that was the only attempt.
Yeah, Minnesota in general, I think they had like 10 points in the paint.
That was the only attempt 20. From Anthony Edwards,
20.
Michael Jordan's son, right? Not officially. But you know what I'm saying? In terms of like the play, 1 shot attempt in the paint, like that's unacceptable. So you really can't get upset at the foul merchant if you're not even trying. Are you in the market for it? Like you got to go to the market and see what you can get.
Yeah, I think this is also a byproduct of the Thunder seeing man-to-man defense for the first time in like 2 weeks and just thinking, freedom.
Yeah, finally.
Like, this is like basketball's back is kind of how it felt. And like the Thunder are back because it felt that, to be honest, this game had the feel of a regular season game to me. Like this did not have the feel of or the intensity of a playoff game to me. I thought the crowd was there, but I didn't think from what I was watching, it just didn't feel to have like the tension on the court that a playoff game typically does. And I think some of that is that, yes, the Thunder had a really bad first half. I think they shot 37% from the field. But I was like, man, they're getting to their spots.
Yeah.
Like they are finding creases in this defense very easily. And if they can just focus and maybe not overthink everything and like overpass everything, which is something I think they were doing, like they're going to crack this defense really quick. And that's what happened in the second half, was that they were able to crack the defense. And like I said, like they threw zone there for a second and like they quickly went away from it. Chris Finch even talked about that before the game. He said that, they had been good at zone last season with their personnel. And then this season, for whatever reason, they could not really play zone. And I think part of that is like when you have like a 4-man like Randle, like you need that 4-man has got to be like a menace on defense, like Aaron Gordon was. And I think Gordon like really made that zone work. We talked about it after Game 7, how whenever he was ineffective, the Thunder cracked it fast.
Yeah.
And so that zone, at least for today, didn't work. I wonder if they go back to it against the Thunder in Game 2. But I'm kind of with S, like this, they're not going to shoot this bad again. Ant's not going to play this poorly again.
Yeah, they can't. There's no way.
And so I think there's going to be a game.
51.
Yeah, there's going to be a game where they shoot, 40% from 3, and then the Thunder are in huge trouble. And so I do think that there will be adjustments made. They will make shots. Jaden McDaniels will make more corner threes. Anthony Edwards will make more than 3 of 8 from 3. Mike Conley was 1 of 5. DiVincenzo was 3 of 12. Nikhil was 2 of 9. But those guys are going to make shots in a game.
Yeah.
And then we'll have a game that'll be tight. Or we'll have a game where Minnesota blows out OKC. That's going to be part of this series. It's going to go back and forth. And so OKC's got to feel really good after this one. I think that they have a lot of answers to the problems that Minnesota's trying to pose to them. But we just have to remember, this is a series. This is going to go back and forth. Minnesota's a very good basketball team, and I think they'll have adjustments moving forward, and some of it can be as simple as make or miss.
Can I leave you guys with a stat?
Yep.
So I just saw this, but most 10-0 runs in a single season since 1996-1997, Oklahoma City now has 106 10-0 runs. Which is just absurd to consider.
Ridiculous.
The 21-22 Golden State Warriors had 98. So that's the difference. The ability to kind of flip on that switch is what is making the difference in these series for OKC. And they're able to turn on the switch better than basically anybody in the league for the last 20 plus years, which is just absurd to think of for this Thunder team. But 3 more wins until the finals. That's all I got.
Oof. Yeah, that 20-6 run in the third quarter was painful if you're Minnesota. To just watch, no way you could stop them. It felt as if Minnesota was a fence earlier in the first half. They kept OKC out of the paint. They were struggling. And then all of a sudden, things just opened up. OKC, as you mentioned, I love that. They were like AI. They learned very quickly and made those adjustments. And so now I want to ask you guys both quickly, do you think Minnesota can steal one on the road against OKC the way they're playing?
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely think so.
In the first 2 games, at least. Do you think they could steal the next one?
100%. 100%. They just have to shoot better and take care of the ball. I would not be surprised if Minnesota responds in a big way. Because, I think Minnesota deserves that level of credit, honestly.
Okay.
I think they're a good, deep team. This was the worst case scenario for them tonight. They literally had the worst type of game against OKC in terms of turnovers and missing their shots. They could bounce back. Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely can bounce back.
Well,
will they is another question. I think that they have a lot to look at. They have a lot to look at with this tape.
Yeah.
Because OKC gave them a ton of problems. The fact that they can go super small, I don't know that they have an answer for that. And so the fact that Mark was throwing that out in the fourth quarter and basically saying, hey, this is the way that we prefer to play against you. And you're a big team, but we prefer to dictate terms this way.
Yeah.
And so I wonder how they actually respond to that. Because I think that, we oftentimes, us basketball nerds, love to actually defend Rudy Gobert. Because I think everybody else loves to hate on him. And so we like to defend the guy and we can actually play. The Thunder just played him completely off the court tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There was no place for him in this game.
He was setting good screens. He was, finding his way into the offense. But you're absolutely right. That dunker spot was getting blown up with him in the back. He was not able to stop and trap the box and stop drivers and such. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And so I wonder how they adjust from there. And this is going to be a very tactical series. And I think Chris Finch is a very good coach. And I think that he'll have some answers. But to me, it all comes down to, can they dictate terms at all in this series? And if they can, then absolutely they can win some games. They can win in game 2, I think. But if OKC continues to dictate terms with lineups, I think this is going to be a very, very difficult series for Minnesota.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm 1000% with you. Thank you, Andrew, for always being on site for us, giving us that OKC insight. Baraheni, of course, and myself, Zena Keita. We appreciate you guys tuning in with us. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's been the NBA Daily.